More recent history is the VIN door jam decals that came out. They really came out in the fall of '69. And so that only affects a few of your cars since the GTO went bye-bye in like '74 originally. But this shows you the history of the VIN door stickers. You know, the first ones were blue, and then they got on tamper-proof stock. And the reason I got involved with that is because I'm in the turbo Buicks, and a lot of them cars got stolen. And boy, VIN stickers on the door are getting to be pretty critical. Some auctions will flag your car if you don't have it. Some states you can't even register the car. And how that deal came about is I saw a guy's ad in a magazine, maybe a year ago. Actually, this company I think is in Missouri. I can't remember the town exactly. This company, ECS Automotive, is the only one licensed by GM, Ford, Lamborghini, Porsche. He does a lot of collision work, a lot of the stickers for all the newer cars. You know, new cars are covered with stickers. You got the airbag stickers, you got all the VIN stickers on the various body panels and stuff. And I called out the company, I said, boy, the Buick people, my market is down here in the 87, 88 versions. I said, I'd like to market them to my market. The guy said, he doesn't wholesale to anybody. He says, he's not interested in anything. I said, well, run my name by him. I said, you know, maybe he knows who I am. 3 days later, the guy calls me up, he says, you're Dennis Kirban. I said, yeah. He says, I bought parts from you over 25 years ago for my Firebird. I said, really? And we've got a relationship going. Now this guy, to give you an idea of how fanatic this guy is, the Mopar Nationals are huge. Okay, I know you people aren't in Mopars. This guy has won at the national level, best of show, 3 different times with 3 different Mopars. So that tells you how good this guy is at what he does. So we worked a deal, and now I do these decals, mostly VIN stickers, mostly for my Turbo Buick people, but I also work with Corvette Central. Of course, Corvette people are just, you know, they're a step above us Pontiac people. You know, they want that original air in the tires. You know, if you could market that, you'd make $1 million. You know, they'll pay $300 for a radiator cap. So VIN stickers are very important. And to give you an idea, the VIN stickers, you know, they have the month and year of your car production, and all that can be found. You know, again, I'm not up on your older cars like I am on the Buicks, but this is the typical body trim plate that would be on your car under the hood. And there's a code in the first couple digits to tell you the month and year and the week. You know, you can really get into it. So that's how you can, if your stickers are missing, that's how you can determine the production date. Now the early ones, they did have the month and year, and of course the VIN number. And then the later ones, they went to twin stickers and so on. So I mean, this affects all your cars from they came out, like I said, in the fall of '69 for the 1970 cars. So all your top end cars probably in that room down there are gonna have one of these stickers. Speaking of those cars in that room, obviously you saw that Ram Air 5 down there. You look at that board, one of the wins for that car says GTO Heaven 1988. That was the event held on my lawn at my old house. That car was there. John Hutchinson and Rick Wright, owner of Purely PMD, brought that car all the way from New Mexico in 1988. And we did that show on my lawn and my neighbor's lawn. We had 7 cars there with Hurst wheels. I had Bill Campbell there. Paul Zazarine was there. John Sorrow was there. I mean, there was a lot of history there for that first event, 1988. And I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure I sold that tag that's on that car, because I did have one of them tags, that funny little readout on it. But probably remember Purely PMD. They did a newsletter, Go Finder, remember that newsletter? He didn't believe in any white space on his newsletters, did he? Holy cow. I think the only distinction I have is I probably had the longest running newsletter. Classic GTO, he was the first. His was a lot more technical than mine. Mine, I don't know much technical stuff. My connection was with Hurst. I gotta take a drink here, folks. Did everyone do the M&M thing? If you haven't, come on up and do it. So, anyhow, as a teenager, Oh, my father had a printing business in Glenside, Pennsylvania. I was probably 13, 14. I was running addressograph machines and inserting machines. They didn't have child labor laws back in my day. And around the corner from my dad's printing business in Glenside, Keswick Avenue, was a little building there, and that's where Hurst started. Well, they didn't start there, but during the 60s, that's where they were located. I'd go over there as a young kid and get the decals, you know, for my covers of my school books. And what's interesting, growing up in near Warminster, Pennsylvania, in that area outside of Philadelphia, is you get hot rod and cartcraft. All the big players back then were in California. Iskey, Crowler, I actually sell some parts to these companies today. It's kind of weird. But all the companies are in California. But here's Hurst, right? It was full page ads in any of the magazines, and here they are right in my neighborhood. So I thought that was pretty cool growing up. Never realizing how that connection would grow over the years. So eventually, when I turned 16 and all, and after served in the military and all, I came back. I bought my first GTO in 1964, when I came back from Vietnam. Then I got married. And ironically, we moved within about a mile of the new Hurst plant that was built in 1965. That's when they put everything under one roof. And my wife got a job at Hurst, driving, and she drove the 64 GTO to work every day. So you start to see the connection. I pulled really good duty after Vietnam. I got stationed at the induction center in Philadelphia, so you got to go home every night. I got to play teacher like I am here, giving tests to the incoming inductees and all. And it's pretty weird because you're dealing with high school graduates that barely graduated, and you're dealing with people that's like 6 years of college education behind them, and you're trying to keep them all amused because they're not on the same wavelength with the induction center, I can tell you that. But that's where I finished my tour. But my wife actually worked in the PR department in 1969 at Hurst. So she got to book the flights because Hurst was a PR machine. I mean, let's face it, they really cranked out the PR stuff. So I always liked the GTO. I mean, that's all you can think about. I mean, the car had a tremendous program. People just loved the car. It was, you know, it's considered the premier muscle car. So anyhow, you think about it, Hurst was a small company, but George was such a PR guy, it had to be a tremendous feeling to land the Pontiac account as the first GM account. I mean, to sell to a you know, one of General Motors' car models had to be a tremendous uprising for him. I mean, it's just unheard of back then. The funny part about it is, GM had a rule back then. They didn't allow any company to have their name visible on the car, except for one exception. You know what it is? The tires. The tires, you can see Goodyear, Uniroyal, whatever. But up in the mid-60s, no company, aftermarket company name was allowed to be visible on a GM car. So that's why in the 64 GTO, there's no Hurst on the chrome stick. Because the other shortcoming, unfortunately for Hurst, is Pontiac put their own, you know, crappy linkage with the shifters. They probably did that to save money and to save time on the assembly line, because the linkage they used, I think, was just a clevis type of deal, not a threaded rod and stuff. So that's why the shifters were, you know, they're kind of crappy. So then, I don't know how it came about, whether Pontiac realized that, boy, Hurst is a big name with all the ads in the magazine, or Hurst insisted they wanted their name on the shifter or whatever. And I don't know if some of the early 65s still had 64 shifters in it, because let's face it, the GTO was built on 13 different plants throughout the country. And I'm not here to say one thing or the other, but at some point in 65, Hurst was permitted to put their name on the shifters. Yes?
I saw a 65 GTO down in Texas. It was the early one that did not have the Hurst on it.
So maybe Kirban's right.
And that was his theory.
Chance of it. Yeah. Yeah. Because, you know, you got to remember, when GM was building these cars, they weren't thinking ahead that, oh, when a guy restores this, does it have an early shifter in it or late shifter in it? You know, it's like when they do brochures in '67. What did they do? They came out with those little red lug nuts and the pictures in the brochure, but they never used them, I don't think. So, I mean, there's all kinds of discrepancies that would pop up during the car's built day. Especially when you have 13 different plants. Now, in the Turbo Buick world, all the all the turbo Buicks were built in one plant, but they screwed up there because they ran all the numbers together with regular Regals. So I get all these questions, well, how many of my car did they make? Well, I don't know, because, you know, or where does it fall in the C-Class? I said, they ran with all the Regals, and, you know, Buick City's not around anymore. You don't even want to drink the water up there in Flint, right? So, I mean, a lot's changed in 30, 40 years. But anyhow, I'm losing my train of thought. Okay, so Hurst landed the Pontiac account, and that was a home run for them. Think about it. Most of those cars were 3-speed stick or 4-speed sticks. I mean, they really cranked it out. And then they did the contest car, the gold one. The funny part about it is Hurst's favorite car was the Oldsmobile, and that's why there's a Hurst Olds and there's not a Hurst Pontiac. So. Again, I'm jumping around a little bit. Let me see something here. Let's talk about Hurst Olds. Which I'll show, let's see. So going back on the shifters, the very early shifters, I call it the yo-yo design. If you look at it, you can tell why I would call it yo-yo design. This worked great for the 3-speed because you can put the pattern right on it. That's a very tough shifter to find today. Everything Hurst did was super strong. I mean, he was a Navy man. I have a friend of mine that served with him in Wood Road. He was a military guy through and through. I mean, I have pictures of him taking heavy underglass to load in on airplanes and take to various bases back in the late 60s and all. So Hurst really appreciated the military. And that was the very early shifters. Of course, they went to the 4-speeds. They went with the round and the ball. And I have over in my private collection, you know, I don't want to brag, but I probably had the rarest Hurst collection anywhere. Because what happened was, in the mid-'80s, Hurst sold out to Mr. Gasket. Mr. Gasket is in, where are they? Brook Park, Ohio, at least they were back then. So all these Hurst employees were losing their jobs. They weren't moving to Ohio. And in the mid-'70s, when I started to do the GTO business, I would get shifters rebuilt for my customers. I would take a shifter down in the morning, take them some Yum Yum donuts. I'd have that shifter done in a couple hours, and I'd take it back home and ship it to the person that sent it to me. I had a great system going. On the mid-'80s, when Mr. Gasket came in, the employees were very upset. And at the time, I was in the towing business. I actually towed a bunch of Hurst Oldses because I towed for the local Oldsmobile dealer. So I had a pretty good connection with Hurst. I was there quite frequently. So when Mr. Gass came in to buy it, they only sent so many tractor trailers to pick up the parts. And I was only interested in the GM stuff. So the employees were selling me stuff every day. I was stopping there. Well, you know, I only had so much money back then. So I was buying all the GM stuff I could buy. But I didn't buy any Mopar stuff. Mopar, pistol grip shifters got thrown out. So much stuff got thrown out. Mr. Gasket was not interested in the old stuff. And Mr. Gasket was a big conglomerate. I don't know how many different companies he owned, but he was not interested in the old stuff. So a lot of stuff got thrown away. And the one thing George Hurst did over the years is he never discounted his parts. If something failed, he either torched it, buried it, or trashed it. He never discounted the stuff. I can remember going to a junkyard, seeing a pile of Hurst wheels as high as that door, and the wheels were torched across the bead, and the center cap had a hole in it. Think about it. How much money would have been sitting there in Hurst wheels. You know, the Hurst wheels was really a flop for Hurst, because no company, no GM company picked it up. He was hoping he could, you know, since he scored with a shifter, he was hoping they would pick that up. And they picked up the dual gate, they did the Hurst hatches. I mean, the thing is, if you remember, starting in the 70s, 4-speed shifters started to go away. You know, they started to make, you know, you got all that emissions crap. They came out with a big push bumpers in 73 that step on, you know. These cars started to get ugly there for a while. I mean, it's just the way it was. So George Hurst was looking ahead, but the Hurst wheel just never took off. And he only made a 14.6. The wheel is actually an Oldsmobile wheel with that center section. But over the years, if you follow my newsletters, whatever, I sold, I think, almost 30 different sets of Hurst wheels. I mean, I really pushed the Hurst wheels with the Pontiac. Of course, you people They didn't let him into judging. They said they weren't an option and all that. But, you know, back then, the wheels were cheap. I remember, and I sold over 30 different GTOs during the years. Many of them I regret selling, of course, for what I did. I mean, you know, in the GTO world, the popular cars were all the different color ones. Black was a really rare color in a GTO, unlike the Turbo Buicks today, where black is a sinister, and they made a lot of them. When it's 64 to 67, you don't see many black original GTOs because people were into colors. I had a beautiful black on black 66 tri-power 4-speed with Hurst wheels, a single white pinstripe, original paint. I sold it for $3,500. Thinking, man, that's all the money in the world for this car. $3,500. You couldn't touch the wheels today for that. Now, if you're familiar with Hurst wheels, they made a lot of different variations of them. They also made some with aluminum trim rings, which was a dumb move because when you pound them with a hammer to put them on, you're going to ding, 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 ding all around the rim. So they never sold. I have one of them in my collection. But like I said, they only made 14.6. Finding gold ones is next to impossible. They were on that contest car, obviously, 65. But the point is, the Hurst wheel just never took off. It was, and no one knows exactly how many they made. So let's skip around a little bit. Let's talk about some of the stuff I made. So I started the GTO business in the late 1970s, probably around 77, 78. I mean, I don't know who started before me. Ames was definitely there, because he was into Chevy. I think then he moved over to Pontiac. But, you know, regardless, I was one of the first people. Matter of fact, my membership card in the GTO club is number 44. So I don't know how many people are still alive that have an older number than I do. But, so I went to one of the first GTO events and noticed a set of splitters sitting on a table, and they were like $125. Now, if you have a 64.5, you know those splitters, they're really tacky looking. They're terrible looking. I thought, $125, that's ridiculous money for those things. So that was actually the first thing that I had made was the GTO splitters. You recognize that? That's what the stainless starts with. 4 of these rolled. It took 2 companies to make the splitters. Third person was a German friend of mine who builds additions on houses, but he's German. The key word is German. He's very engineering oriented. The funny part about it is our original house in the 1970s, I had them build an addition on my house. I said, I'll bring you a box, a dozen Yum Yum donuts every day. Every box will be numbered 1 through 50. When this hits 50, I want the addition done. He said, okay, we'll do it. See, that's what you gotta do with Yum Yum Donuts is a big donut place back in my area. They're not like Dunkin' Donuts, but these donuts are even better. But anyhow, so I would put a smart remark on it each day, and when it hit 50, they had the addition done. Now my house, when I started, I worked out of my house, and we shipped out of my house. I had them put in my basement door, a power door that slid left to right. All you had to do was hit a button. You didn't have to hit the door at all. It was pretty cool looking. And I had a GTO emblem put in the floor in the basement. So it's kind of neat that way. But anyhow, what he would do is that was the stainless. So we took 4 of them. This is what he would start with. The company, I got lucky. The neighbor 2 doors down from me was an older guy, and he owned a machine shop. And he told me, he gave me a quote to make the stampings. It takes 4 stampings. There's a left and a right. There's 2 halves, of course, and there's splitters. You know, there's a left and right of the car. I put this rubber on it so I don't cut my hands, because this stuff is sharp. This back when I started, I can't remember what year I did this, the original splitters. It was $10,000 my buddy wanted to do this stamp. So I slept on that for about a week. I'm thinking, $10,000, you know, this is back when GTOs were like $3,500 tops. I'm thinking, man, I don't know, that's a lot of money, and I still got to do the stainless, and I still got to get them together. I don't know if I'll ever get my money back. So I decided to go ahead with it. Yeah. Remember, blood stains. So, so anyhow, I agreed to do it. I said, boy, I hope this takes off. I said, but you know what? They really look good on the car. You know, the funny part about it is that if you look at 64.5s, it kind of ticks me off sometimes since I'm the guy that did these. Most people don't put them on their car right. You know, the thing is, you only see about a third at the most of the whole splitter. And then you got to have the right hangers involved, which we did the right hangers too, by the way, at some point. So anyhow, this German guy and his brother said, okay, we can put them together. I'll do it in my basement. Well, his brother is a really laid-back guy. I mean, he basically cast a shadow on the building when the sun was up. He didn't really do a lot of work. But that was a standard joke back then. He said, oh, I'd give it a month. So his brother backed out of the project. He said, you're only going to sell a few of them. I said, okay. So the one brother who's very energetic, actually, he still makes some Buick cars for me today. He's like almost 80 years old. The German ethic, work ethic, is a lot different than a lot of different people today. So anyhow, he said, okay, we'll make them. So we got to make about 20 sets at a time to make it worthwhile to me. I said, geez, 20 sets at a time. So I said, okay. So as they say, the rest is history. I mean, the funny part about it, he's made it for over 20-some years until I sold the business. I sold that out of the GTO business a few years ago to Performance Years, who sold the retail end to Ames Performance. So I'm not in the GTO business anymore. I just did the split scoops again now. But anyhow, all those years, that man has never, ever seen a GTO splitter. He says, I don't know where you're selling these things. Every year was about the same number. I mean, we only sold a couple hundred every year, but when you add up over 20, 25 years, that's a lot. And there's nobody, as far as I know, has ever done them like I do. I mean, they're my splitters no matter where you go in the country on a GTO. I mean, and the funny part about it is, and I discovered this later, is because I bought a Ram Air 67 Firebird. The 67, 68 Firebird used the same Y, except different tips. The tips were longer and had a flat spot for the leaf spring. So then I did the Firebird split. Now they're not as popular because a lot of Firebird owners never knew they even existed. And I didn't discover that till like 5, 6 years later. But so we did both those splitters. Let's see what else. If you're all familiar with the 64 GTO steering wheel, this is a real critical part. These were hard to find in good shape. We're the company that made these. These are, I deal with a metal spinner. If it's round, bring it around. In other words, if it's round, this guy could make it. And I had these made in copper or brass, so they never fit. And I priced these pretty pricey because the steering wheel back in my day was a $500–600 steering wheel. So this is not no $20 part. Ames did the medallion, went in the center, and we were the company that did these. I don't think anyone else ever did. Yeah, Marty wants to see it. I'm probably going to put it in his pocket. But that was my product too.
How much did these sell for?
I think they were like $100.
That was back when.
Huh?
That was back when.
Oh man. That's been out a long time. You know, I wasn't good at record keeping to know. You know, when I started making this stuff, I didn't think of tracking when I started making. I mean, you could probably look at the old newsletters and stuff. I did the same problem with the Buick. I sold over 320 turbo Regals back in the 90s. I mean, I went as far as the Mississippi to pick them up. The problem is I never stuck my business card in any of them to track them later on, but I did keep the VIN numbers because people call me and they want to know if it's one of my old cars. There you go, there's a little brake handle. Simple, right? That told me several thousand. First of all, everything I had made was made in the USA. Everything. Nothing was made overseas. I didn't have any connections overseas. I ran a towing business. I had 3 different tow trucks. I did stuff for my dad. And I would pick up cars and stuff. So I had no connections overseas. You know, in other words, I didn't put all my eggs in one basket. This little sucker was a couple $1,000s for this tool. Now, if you think about it, you can't get much more than $10 for a little brake handle. But our brake handles are kind of unique. But you know the only reason this came about? And I get them mixed up. I think yours are pressed on, aren't they? Or are they threaded? I can't remember which. Well, the Chevelle takes the same one, except it's threaded. Well, the Chevelle is a huge market. Oldsmobile is different. So by making threaded and non-threaded ones, I was able to cover both markets with this little handle and get my money back. And they were all hand painted too back when we did these. See, when you're in the tunnel business, the one connection I had was with the local junkyards, because I could go to the junkyard, and back then they let me in and I said, I'm here to check your inventory, whatever. And I would look at all the older cars to see what years were the same. When you make a part, you know, there was no internet back then. So I had to go to the junkyard and figure out what year cars took the same part to verify before I started marketing. And most of the marketing I did, I sold to other companies. I wasn't interested in doing a lot of retail. I sold to all the big players back then. I did all the original clutch springs. Probably recognize this, 64.5, right? Birthed it. 1 year, single spring was those years. It's a pretty weird looking spring. Well, it just so happens, one of the oldest spring companies in the country is Kirban. They started in the 1800s. They made springs for elevators, for wagons, for Lincoln's wagon and stuff. They made these springs. Again, USA made, so they weren't cheap, plus you had to paint them. But this is a 64.5 spring. I did the 66 sevens, which was 2 springs. I think the 68 to 72 is a different spring. And one of them crosses over for the Chevelle market. But we did all the original springs back then. Anybody recognize this? This was my product. Your HO cars. This is the little heat shield that goes on the solenoid. Man, I sold thousands of these. This was cheap to make. This was made by a company. This gave me another in. This one company I dealt with, the owner of the company had a 65 GTO. Boy, when the owner of the company has a GTO, you're in. Because think about it, most companies won't even give you time of day unless you're talking thousands of pieces in the US, you know, back then. You know, and I was a young guy. I mean, you know, I didn't wear no suit and tie or anything when I went to these companies to try to make stuff. But this is a very successful part for me. Unfortunately, we didn't make a lot of money on it. It was only like a $10 or $15 part. One of the first things we made was the radiator straps. Now they're made right. But we made all the 64, the 68 radiator straps. 68 GTO was unique 1 year by itself. 64 to 7, there's several different versions. There was a tall one. If you have an original GTO 64, you only had a taller radiator, it had 4-core radiators. The thing with radiator shrouds, that was a home run for me. That was the most, I mean, we were picking them up. I can't imagine how many we were picking up and painting them on a day-to-day basis. The company that made them for me was in Horsham. Their big clients, Disney and Sesame Street, and they made the big pep boys that sat on top of buildings. They made the big figures for Sesame Street and all. When I walked in there, with the first shroud, I would go to junkyards, so I figured out all the GTOs didn't have shrouds. So when I walked in with a shroud, they made the first shroud, they made one mold. And they barely gave me the time of day because I didn't know how well they'd sell. Well, by the time we were done, and each of the shrouds they were making, they had 3 or 4 molds. I mean, I was going there almost every day picking shrouds up. Because here's the key thing. It wasn't a cosmetic item, but you rebuild a motor, heat is the #1 killer. And shrouds are very critical when you rebuild a motor. It helps get the air to it. Now, I'm not an expert, I'm not a mechanic, but the fan has to sit halfway in and halfway out. And it draws the air, and if you've got a bad clutch fan, you can tell and all that. But we sold a ton of radiator straps. I mean, now Ames, someone makes them the right way where they're smooth on both sides. But that wasn't a critical thing back then. It was just a fiberglass shroud. It did its job because, you know, you spent thousands of dollars having a motor rebuilt. You want the thing to cook because of heat. And the shroud, all the cars were set up for it. They already had the holes in the core support. All you had to do was bolt it up. And we're the company that made all those shrouds. So if you see a shroud out there that's good, rough on the inside, it came from me. And one of my people painted that sucker for many years.
Hey, Dennis,
Yeah.
just a fast thing for everybody here. I'm from New York originally, and when I moved out here, people would say radiator. They don't know how to say radiator. So if you notice, Dennis says radiator also, so maybe that's something in the Northeast. But when I looked it up in the dictionary, it actually is
Here's a clever product I made. 64 to 66. They have a AC oil cap or something like this. Well, this isn't a finished product. Back when I was in the business, you could still buy these oil caps from General Motors, except they didn't look like this. And you know, our cars all had chrome valve covers and a chrome oil cap. I mean, it's just, and it's a visual thing. I mean, and this was a pretty clever product. So I bought the GM ones, and I went to a guy who was a metal spinner. I said, can you chop that top off? Can we make a correct top and put it on that? And then, because it doesn't matter what the guts look like, you don't see it, but this is a very visible part. And he said, well, you got to get the AC oil on there. Well, if you notice, the AC and oil is punched up and the dimples go down. So then I had to find somebody that had the equipment to do that. Well, I found a little old man near me who actually did the stampings for the Studebaker truck tailgates. You know, back then in the 50s, all those tailgates were stamped. So I had him make the tooling to make that. Now, I learned a lot about chrome plating. You want to start with brass or copper. Chrome plating only reflects how much time and money and effort someone's put into polishing the part before it's chrome plated. Because chrome plating just gets popped on and that's it. So, if you start with brass and copper, it's a softer metal and it's easier to polish before it's plated. Plus the fact, I knew using brass and copper, it's never going to pit. I know when people call me up, oh, the thing pitted after 6 months. You know, that's what happens a lot of your Taiwan, China. I mean, you got to remember, I did this back in the days when I owned up U.S. companies. And the problem with making this part is I had no idea how long GM was going to have that other radiator cap in stock. So this was a real gamble for me. Now, fortunately, they had this in stock for several years. And, you know, my finished product is as good as the reproductions that are out there today. You don't see you hardly see any spin lines. Now, I can't recognize what's my cap out there and what's the reproduction. It really don't matter to me. But that's what the finished product looks like. You know, the funny part about it is when I started in the GTO business, I only focused on the 64 to 7 GTOs. There is the original tooling to make that AC oil cap. You know, my kid knows that my office at home, I have a whole office of my really rare stuff. My kid knows, you know, when I'm dead and gone, that room's worth a small fortune, you know. You all are familiar with the Hallmark Maxine and the dog, right? I had the full-size 5-foot high ones. I had the Mountain Dew mannequin. I've got the Yoda that Pepsi made, but only made 1,000 of them. I have the original artwork for the Hurst wheel. I always collected signs and that rare stuff. You know, my mother collected Hummels as a kid. As a kid, I collected Hummels for my mom. My mom was into Hummels. Well, I collected the Hummels that had the name of the store on it because they didn't make 100 of them. That's the smart way. You want to go after something. Now look at today. You go to Carlisle or East Flea Market, they get a fortune for signs, and you don't know if it's an original or it's a reproduction where they hammered it to make it look like an old one. But I collected this stuff when it was reasonable. It was like in the 70s. My father would speak all over the country 10 days a month, and I would travel with my truck and sell his books. And I would go down south. I mean, I still remember seeing signs that said whites only. I mean, I'd never seen this stuff before. And when I would travel down south, I got smart. I bought an open trailer, and I would come back with a muscle car because they were rust-free down there. And I would go into these little Coca-Cola bottling places when you're changing the signs from drink to enjoy. I would buy up all their signs. It was just, I'd never seen this stuff before. I would take it home and sell it, or I would keep some of it. But this is back before the stuff became popular. I gotta take another drink. Anybody bored yet? Okay, let's see. There's always been confusion about the spinners on the Hurst wheels. this was their original idea, was the 2-prong spinner, but they never did it. It was the 3-prong spinner. And the thing with those spinners is they got ribs in it. And it's just like 64 hood screws. When you're talking ribs and pitting, I mean, the guy who does restoration will tell you, it gets expensive to do that repair work to re-chrome. But that's the prototype of the original Hurst spinner that they did not use. There's a shifter handle that Hurst never made. Matter of fact, if you ever see another one, I suggest you buy it. I don't know of any other ones. You know, I used to, well, I'll get into it a little later, but you're probably familiar with, you know, Hurst. They made a lot of fuzzballs, shifter handle balls, and the T-handles. You know, T-handles came about one night, according to Bill Campbell. They were playing around with clay, and that's how they made that the T-handle shift. Of course, the original ones were plastic, which would crack. If you have a '69 Judge, Pontiac, I don't know which is which, but Ford, you know, Ford and GM used the metal T-handle, right? I can't remember which Ford used and which one GM used, but one had the open for, one had the closed for. So if you look at a Judge and it has the open for, the Ford's going to have the closed one. So there's little differences. Unless you're familiar with it, you think, oh, they're all the same. Well, they aren't all the same. Every company, including myself, to be successful, you're always going to have a flop or something that doesn't take off. This was a prototype ball that Hurst made. Anybody want to guess why this was a flop? Or why it never got made? Because of liability? Anybody? Nobody?
Acting like a prism.
Yes. It burned a hole in the seat. Almost instantly. This worked like a magnifying glass. You know, when you're a kid, you're down there doing it. Man, it took me a long time to acquire one of these. I don't know how many are out there, but, you know, living near the plant, I mean, people didn't pay much attention to it. It's one of those things. It's like, when you're in the neighborhood, people don't pay attention to it, but somehow I was smart enough to pay attention to it. Speaking of which, I'll talk about Don Garlitz here in a second. I got to be friends with the art director there at Hurst. He became the art director in the mid-'60s when he walked into a printing place. He had his own art studio. And George Hurst was there getting printing done, and George Hurst was looking for an art director. This is before they moved to their big new building. And Bob Held was the guy. He was like almost 40 years old. He wasn't even a car guy, but boy, he was a tremendous, tremendous artist. And he saved everything. This is artwork he did in 1938 in art school. This is the original deal to tell you how talented this guy was. This is from art school. When he went into World War II, he did a lot of artwork for the military. I mean, this ain't no internet stuff. This ain't no Photoshop. This is the real stuff. And this is, you know, I figured from the 40s, this is over 70 or 80 years old. I have stuff, he did artwork for Tasty Cake, L&M cigarettes. I mean, I have a lot of that stuff. There's some more artwork. Some of us old timers remember the Esterbrook fountain pens. But, so he took the job at Hurst, figured, now, how long is this job going to last? Well, he was there until almost till Mr. Gasket came in. So he did a lot of the original artwork, he did all the decals. A super nice guy, very cantankerous when he got older. I would go down there about twice a month to his house. Whatever bills he had that month, that's how much he wanted for the Hurst stuff. He put out on the dining table for me to buy. There was no arguing about it. That's what I had to pay. I'd be out there working in his yard a little bit to help him out. And the neighbor had this dog that was always barking. And he'd say to me, he said, someday I'm going to kill that dog. I said, Bob, don't talk like that. That dog turns up dead. They're going to come for you first, whether you did it or not. But he was that type of guy. Funny part about it, I remember when he died, I cleaned out this one little shed out back. There must have been 20 different baseballs and volleyballs and footballs. They must have been thrown over his yard and never returned them to the kids. No wonder none of the kids in the neighborhood liked him. He was a very cantankerous individual, but he did collect everything. I mean, it's something. So anyhow, I bought all this stuff from him, mostly when he passed away from his widow. And among the stuff I had was pictures of Don Carlisle taking apart one of his top fuel dragsters in the Hurst garage, I guess between races in Englishtown or Atco, I don't know what. So I got a hold of Don Carlisle. I said, you know, I have all these photographs of you probably from about 20 years ago. I said, I'll send them to you as a gift. So I sent them to him as a gift, and he called me and thanked me. So years ago, my buddy developed ZDP for the oil. You might have heard of it. He put it in a can and stuff. So my buddy said, boy, we need a spokesperson for that. And he said, do you know anyone? I said, I don't know anybody. He said, oh, I know Don Carlisle. You think you'd be interested? I said, I don't know. I said, I'll call him up. He said, you have his phone number? I said, yeah, I have his private cell number. So I called him up and he said he'd be interested. So my buddy has a team of lawyers that draws up this 20-page contract. I sent it down to Don Carlisle to sign. We agreed on the figures. Don calls me up screaming at me. He says, I'm not signing this 20-page thing. I want you to do a single-page contract and I'll sign it. I said, Don, all I have is a high school diploma. I said, I'm not in college or know how to word stuff. He said, it's the only way I'll do it. You write it up, I'll sign it. So I said, okay. And my wife is a perfectionist. So I did this contract, Don signed it. I laminated a copy, put it in my office, I showed it to my wife, and said, look, that's for the high school education. Don Carlisle signed this high-dollar contract for me. So, and then a few years later, Paul and I go down to, he does this big Mopar show in the fall. So this is back in 2010. They had just gotten drag pack car number 1 from Chrysler as a gift. You know, they built like 50 of them. So Castle and I are down there among all these Mopar people. Nobody knows us. It's one of the few events I go to where no one knows me at all. So we're helping Don put out his stuff for the garage. He's having a garage sale. So he's putting out all this stuff. This is really rare stuff. And nobody's buying any of it. And I had my Tahoe with me, and he had his truck with him. So Don had 300 pistons and connecting rods. He pulls these out after one run. I said, how much you want for them? I'll buy every one you got. You sign them. He said, you're kidding me. I said, no. I said, I'll buy every one of them. So he signed every one of them. I bought the tailgate off his truck because it had a dent in it. He had taken the tires and wheels and suspension out of the drag pack car. I had to sign all that. So we're loading all this in my truck, and he's buying a bunch of stuff, and these Mopar people are looking at us like, are you guys nuts? Who in the world are you people? I said, well, Don Carlisle is right here, and you guys aren't buying any of this stuff? I couldn't believe it. So, you know, I sold a bunch of stuff, and I brought it all home with me. I mean, it's just, that's history. I mean, you know, the thing is, we all screwed up. DeLorean lived right in New Jersey. How many people got his signature on his car? Nobody. You go to a Corvette show, you see all these big names signed on the valve cover stuff and all. I mean, a guy had me sign his trunk lid on his GTO because my taillights are in his car. I mean, they have Jim Wanger's signature. You know, once a person passes, the value just shoots up. I mean, it's the way it goes in life. I mean, when my father, he went to Girard College, he was poor, he collected autographs. And back then, they were free. He collected politicians and movie stars. And I have Walt Disney's autograph. I have Frank Capra that did It's a Wonderful Life. I have several things. C.D. DeMille, they're all to my dad, to Salem signed. I mean, that stuff is precious. I mean, you know, it's just one of those things. And autographs are so easy to get from people. You buy a book from someone downstairs like Bill Shorthouse, get him to sign it for crying out loud. The guy's 83 years old. I had a talk with him yesterday. He said, he mentioned his mother-in-law, and I'm thinking, boy, you're 83 and you're mentioning your mother-in-law. I said, is she still alive? He says, yes, she lives with us. I said, how old is your mother-in-law? 103 years old. She drinks wine every day. Ask Bill. I kid you not, his mother-in-law is 103 years old. That's got to be a record. Poor man's tolerated that all these years. Holy smokes. I just was flabbergasted. Because I'm thinking, oh, she must have passed away years ago or something. He's a character. But, you know, that was an interesting talk. Well, I'm losing my train of thought again, folks. But nobody's bored yet, right? many people have seen this? How about that, huh? Boy, what's the value on this today? I have no idea. I bought this years and years ago. Sure, it's worth at least $100, right? Yeah, they had a twin pack and a single pack. You know, some company made little red wagons that said GTO, because it probably stood for something else, because you know, you got all that logo infringements and stuff. But that's part of my private collection. There's the spinner, folks. That's the one you want. It's funny, I did the reproduction decals years ago. Guy calls me up and says, hey, they're supposed to be black and green. I said, no, they're not. The gold fades to green. I said, green has no bearing on Hurst. Hurst colors, Hurst was like the gold color. They were never green and black. So anytime you see one faded, that if you look at it, that's why it looks like a shade of green. You know, people usually take me at my word because they, you know. In the Turbo Buick world, I wrote the first book I wrote for that, in that business, was 350 pages long. When you write a book, people have more respect for it, you know. Because once you're an author, people look at you differently. Now, I don't know exactly where they got the idea for that spinner, but there's the Mustang around 64, 65. It is very similar. They might have contacted that company and make it solid or something, but if you look at a 65 Mustang that has the big hubcaps on it, that spinner is very similar, you know. But like I said, anytime you get ribs, boy, if it ain't new, forget it. You're going to spend a fortune getting it replated. Because it's all in the prep work, folks. It's all in the prep work. Whereas this paperweight's pretty priceless. There's an original gold anodized center cap. They only did this for special things. It's like they had the Hurst wheel cufflinks and all in silver, but the executives got gold ones. Of course, in my collection, I've got the gold, I got the silver, I got the Doc Watson reproductions. I went after all that stuff years ago. I had the T-handle Linda Vaughn used to hold on to. I paid $50 for it. It was getting thrown out. I got Hurst can. I mean, you know, I would go down there. I mean, I only had so much money back then to be buying this stuff from the employees, but they were really fed up. I mean, you have no idea. I mean, Mr. Gasket, I mean, I remember seeing the tractor trailers there loading stuff. The funny part about it is, the Hurst plant is still there today. I had the original blueprint for the building. I mean, this guy, the art director I was telling you about, he saved everything. I mean, there was empty Whitman chocolate boxes in his garage. I mean, this guy did not, I don't know why the trash man bothered coming to his house. He never threw anything away. The guy, remember, with leg stockings used to come in those little eggs? Hundreds of them. What was he going to do with them? He's not going to take them to his next world, is he? So anyhow, gee, I lost my train of thought again. Trying to think, was it? What? Oh yeah, the factory blueprint. Well, the building today is twice as big. The company there makes the food containers for Kraft, so they're a big player. I went to the company maybe 10 years ago. Glass case, you know, the receptionist opens and went, what do you want? I said, well, I got something the CEO might be interested in about this building. And I said, I had the blueprint for this building. He said, well, she says, oh, he's probably not interested. I said, well, here's my card anyhow. I must not make a good impression when I stop and see these people. But anyhow, a few days later, the owner of the company calls me up. And I go down and meet with him. He says, you know, the funny part about it is up till about a few years ago, we were still getting shifters in here from people to get them refilled. I said, really? I said, I got the blueprint for this building. I said, I'm willing to give you a copy of it free. He said, oh, that would be great. I said, you know this lobby here that has this rug on it? I said, years ago, there was a tile floor under this that had the Hurst logo on it. And I said, I remember there was 4 seats in here that were GTO bucket seats with the rare headrest. I don't know what year the headrest came out, 66 or 7. But I said, they were mint. He said, well, I don't know what happened to those seats, but they were gone. I said, well, if you ever rip this rug up, I said, I'd like to see that floor. And I said, maybe there's a way to save it. So he said, okay, I'll work with you. So a year later, he calls me up. He says, you know, we're going to redo the front lobby. So I go down there. They rip the rug up, but unfortunately, the tile floor was a one-piece thing, and it's just crumbled. So I couldn't save it, you know. But I thought that was pretty interesting. He says, you know, this building now, he said, when I bought this building, I never realized the history of it. And then a couple years later, a company in South Carolina, North Carolina, I can't remember where, called me up. They had purchased, you know, companies change hands about every couple of years. Now, Hurst is now part of Driven by Brands, it's owned by B&M, and Flowmaster, and some company owns that. You know, it's like, you know, nothing, everything changes. I mean, I actually do, the funny part about it is I actually do license agreements for Hurst for small companies so they can stay legal. They're not big enough to deal with them direct. So I work to deal with Hurst, and I do for small companies so they can stay legal. They pay me every quarter, and I split it with Hurst and send them the payment, which is kind of cool. I mean, you know. But anyhow, I lost my train of thought again. Need another drink. But it was pretty interesting, the fact that the company is still down there. Oh, Jaws of Life, the South Carolina. The company calls me up. They had just purchased the Jaws of Life, which was a division of Hurst. And I'm told that Jaws of Life sold for more than the regular Hurst company did. The Jaws of Life is still used today. I don't know if you've ever seen that in operation, but my wife and I were at a funeral once. We're coming back. I'm in a suit and tie. One of the few times I'm in a suit and tie. This lady in a Cadillac Eldorado goes up this embankment and flips the car on its side. So she's laying on the passenger side. We were the first ones there. Now, if you're familiar with this Cadillac Eldorados of the 94 to 96, and you're trying to lift the driver's door straight up, you know, I'm a little guy. It's hard to do. And so my wife calls on her cell phone, 911 or whatever. Emergency people come. They bring the Jaws of Life. They cut that roof open like you open a can of soup at home. And I was remarking to the guy, I said, you know, I knew the guy that invented that. He said, oh yeah, right. I said, no, really? I said, the Jaws of Life. I said, that's a well-known product. That's still used today. Bill Campbell, the co-founder of Hurst, actually worked on the original version of the Jaws of Life. But anyhow, the company called me up in North Carolina or South Carolina. They had no idea the history of the Jaws of Life. They couldn't believe it was connected to a company that made shifters in the 60s. And I said, oh yeah. I said, I have pictures somewhere when they went down and tested the Jaws of Life in front of the politicians down in D.C. I said, George Hurst was big on safety. I mean, all his stuff was super strong. I mean, the Hurst wheel was super strong, the shifters, you know, they were triple chrome plated. I mean, they were built to take the punishment, you know. And the Jaws of Life is the most popular way to open up a can, as far as a car in this case, or whatever. But it's still used today. Let's see. Boy, here's something that Hurst Olds guy would really pay big money for. You're all familiar with the Hurst Olds engine, right? Well, you know, to get to that point, there has to be a prototype somewhere. This is a stamping of the prototype. The word old is not completely in the circle. You know, I don't know the value of it, and I don't really care, but, you know, that's the real deal, folks. And that came out when the Hurst Olds came out in '68. I'm not passing that around, Marty. You have to check your pockets.
Where did you find that prototype?
I got, like I said, since I was getting shifters rebuilt all the time, and I had the towing business, and then when Hurst was closing, the employees just kept approaching me, and I would just buy the stuff. I mean, like I said, I've been really fortunate in life. I grew up near the Hurst plant. The two cars that I based most of my income on was the GTO and then the Turbo Buicks. I mean, you can't get my, you know, at least I invest in the Yugo. I mean, this is one of the, I mean, we do make parts. The big part of my wholesale business is Mustang. I mean, we sold over 30,000 fuel regulators in that world to American Muscle, Late Model, all the big players. Callaway uses my shifters. You know, Corvette where Callaway's like God. I mean, you know what I mean? That's a different world, but we don't do much retail in that business. It's all through companies. Eckler's a long-time customer of mine. You know, when I started year one, Lemon, the original owner year one, I mean, I sold all those people. See, the smart thing is to wholesale to everybody else, because everyone never heard of Dennis Kirban. It's more important to sell 20 pieces to another company, let them do it, you know? The other thing is, back in my day, I would talk to the big companies, so we didn't make 3 and 4 of the same part. That don't happen today, you know, so you don't know whose reproduction part you're getting. Is it the good one or is it the bad one? You know, but in my day, if I said I was going to make something, Ames and all, you know, they wouldn't make it. I mean, it just makes sense because I wholesaled to them and I saved them that investment. You know, it was a different time period back then when these cars were just starting to come out. There's another prototype, Hurst handle, all aluminum with the word Hurst on it. Here's something I did years ago. You probably know Gary Cave. Gary Cave has he's got a heck of a collection of GTOs. He probably has 100 GTOs. He's been a good friend of mine for a long time. When I started making different GTO parts, I would call him up because I knew he had the original. And you know, whenever you're making something, you need the original to start with. Just checking the time. But anyhow, I wanted to do, back then there's only one company that did date-coded plug wires called Electric Limited. They did them for the Corvettes. They did the first and third, they did the odd numbered quarters, first and third, all the Corvettes. They were like $75 to $100 for a set of wires. GTOs didn't have any date-coded wires. Matter of fact, in the first issues of the GTO Restoration Guide, they didn't even touch on the fact that the wires were date-coded. Now, the later editions, they did bring they did make the revisions, and they put about the GTOs all had date-coded plug wires. You know, 1 through 4, whatever. Well, the expense there is, first of all, you have to get Packard's permission. And I didn't know anyone at Packard. And the other thing in my head was, can't do first and third quarters because people will confuse it with Electric Limited. I'll get smart, I'll do the second and fourth quarters every year. So you need a print wheel. Print wheels are like, back then they were like $100 some a print wheel. So right away I'm thinking 2 print wheels, we'll do 64 to 70. You know, so there's a couple $1,000s there. The guy in my neighborhood was actually in this plug wire business, and he made plug wires for NASCARs. So he already had the name. And I happened to sell him one of my BMWs, so I already had an in with him. And he was able to secure Packard's permission. So I was off and running. So we did the original plug wires, second and fourth quarter. So then I figured, well, gee, Oldsmobile, all we gotta do is find an Oldsmobile owner who's got an original car, and I can start doing different Oldsmobile ones. And then it dawned on me, it's not a big market, but the AMC cars, the Ramp Scrambler, and I forget the other ones, but in 70, you know, it's a very small market, so we did them too. And we did the second and fourth quarter, and then I sold that business to Ames years ago because the guy got impossible to deal with. He's a one-man operation. Actually, he died suddenly, maybe about 2 years ago, but he's got someone else running his business, and he makes all my turbo Buick wires, because I have the correct length turbo Buick wires. They don't make word in them, but they're gray, and they're the correct lengths. So we did, and then Electric Limited, I think, might have done the second and fourth quarters, but if you bought wires, say, 15 years ago, and it's got the second or fourth quarter on it, they all came from my company, and Gary checked all the lengths because they changed. You know, I forget some of the lengths changed between 64 and 70, obviously, when they went from 389, 400, depends how they're wired in the car. But we did the original wires, and that's one of my original packs with what it was. Here's some examples of some of the T-handles Hurst did over the years. There's a red plastic one. Probably never seen one of them. Of course, the fuzzy ones. Different colors they did them. Believe it or not, Hurst even made some golf balls. Probably never seen one of them. It's got the Hurst logo. This is the later one. That's the later Hurst logo. It came out in the 1980s. Of course, they made the lighters, and, Zippo lighters. Like I said, Hurst was a real cranking PR. They made various pens and a pen holder and stuff. I mean,
Or the engineers.
yeah, I mean, a lot of this stuff was just throwaway items, but you know, I went after that stuff.
Didn't you meet your wife at Hurst?
No, my wife was actually 2 years behind me in high school. She was on the honor society. I was at the other end of the spectrum, as one can imagine. Funny story about my wife. In the early 70s, my wife took up calligraphy. If you don't know what calligraphy is, it's really fancy handwriting. I mean, my wife was a real perfectionist. And she got to meet some pretty high-powered people. So we got invited to this dinner up in New York, one of these suit and tie affairs, which I hate. She warned me ahead of time. She says, "Watch what you say. Don't embarrass her." I said, "Okay, I'll try." So we go to this dinner. The guy on my right writes for Time magazine. This is in the 70s. The lady that my wife knew was a Japanese lady, did some real artistic work. And I forget who else was at the table. The question comes up, what do you like to read? Now this is in the 1970s. So I sat there and I think for a minute. And I read I bought Mad Magazine every month. So I said, I buy Mad Magazine. Looks can kill. I'd have been dead. The Japanese lady says, I do a lot of their artwork. And my wife looked at her like, what? And she says, they are very particular, and that artwork has to be exact. I mean, I don't remember all the exact lingo, but she did a lot of the artwork for Mad Magazine. Boy, talk about saving grace. But anyhow, true story. You know, I don't know all the different variations on your white gear shift knobs. I know they've been reproduced, and there's off-white, and some of the numbers are different thicknesses and all. I mean, who knows what's really correct today? I mean, it's just one of those things. And you got the jam nut to lock it in tight. I know mine are original as far as the age goes. I don't know what's correct or what's incorrect. And there's a red knob. I mean, like I said, Hurst made a lot of different knobs. Some of them took off, some of them didn't. Here you go, your 67 GTO would probably love to have this as their display. This is an original Hurst display. I think this is what your dual gate looked like in 67, right? It's funny, they only used the dual gate in 67, 68. I don't know what happened in 69, why they didn't continue it. You know, I have no idea. Actually, my wife had a 68 GTO she would drive. Back in the day, we had a 68 we kept. This is one of the badges from one of the employees at Hurst. Actually, my wife worked in his, he headed up the PR department, Jack Duffy. I mean, my buddy, this art director guy, man, he had pace car keys, I had all them. What he would do is, you know, back when they did those ads and stuff, he took the stuff home to do it, but he just never brought it back to the Hurst plant. He just kept everything. He just never came back. Here's a copy of the original flyer from 1966 December when they introduced the actual T-handle. That's when it first came out. I'm sure a lot of you recognize these decals. That's some of this work that Bob Held did. And if you were to look closely at some of them, he'll have his last name in the smoker on the actual wheel. But when he died, I was able to get his obituary written up in Auto Week and the magazine Paul Zazarek did. I can't remember what it was called back then. Classic 60s or Muscle Car Review, which I thought was really nice. I mean, you know, he wasn't a big name, but once you saw his work, you recognized who he was. I mean, he was there for over 20 years. And like I said, the funny part about it, he wasn't a car guy. This is pretty cool. There's two different Pontiacs with a big handle that Linda Vaughn would stand on the back trunk lid back in the day. This is probably 66, 67 vintage. There's your 67 ad about the dual gate coming into GTO. Boy, I'd like to have that display. I don't know whatever happened to that, but look at the size of that dual gate. Your early dual gates had a key to lock it out. That's George's first wife. George was more of a womanizer. Bill Campbell, the co-founder, he's a very laid-back engineer. Bill Campbell still has a 37 LaSalle he used to date his wife in. He's still married to the same woman. Bill Campbell, he quit or got fired in 1969. He just had enough of it. You know what him and his buddies did after that? Well, talk about hitting a home run in two different worlds. Him and his buddies went up to Canada and they bought the Prevost bus company. If you do some research, they were those $1 million buses that rock stars use today. They bought that company in 1969 when they were only building about 50 buses a year. He sold that company in the early 1990s, either to Volvo or Ford. I can't remember which. But, you know, think about it. You're at the top of the game in the shifter business with Hurst, and then you go and buy the Prevost bus company. So he was a very smart individual. Actually, here's a picture of the original Hurst plant. Like I said, you won't see much stuff that says Hurst Campbell. The can said Hurst Campbell. And it's kind of funny that George Hurst's name had the H pattern for Hurst, you know, so it kind of worked out pretty cool for him that his name was easy to do with the Hurst logo for the shifters. Let me explain that. That's the artwork. This is a little off the topic, but if you're up north and you store your car for the winter, this is something you don't want to do. I'll pass this around if you really want to take a good look at it. You already seen it. This guy, when he called me up, I couldn't believe it. It's probably about 10 years ago. He made the mistake of storing his car. It's a GNX. GNXs are now bringing $100,000. This GNX only had 500 some miles on it. Stored the car in a building where two candy vendors stored their panel trucks. But they didn't take all the candy out of the panel trucks. Stored it for the winter, didn't look at the car till the spring. He calls me up and he says, "You won't believe the mess under my hood." And I couldn't visualize it in my head. Over 50 pounds of candy stuffed in every nook and cranny under the hood of that GNX. He was sick. That's just under the hood. Who knows what's in the pipes, or what's in, you know, rodents can do terrible damage, let alone eating the wires, and, you know, and the Buicks that get underneath that hood liner, punch a hole in it, and, you know, or they clog up the air cleaner. I mean, you all have the same problems. You know, in my world, I have a nice pole barn, and I have 6 cats with a little cat door, and I don't have any rodent problems at all. And the thing is, my wife's got a little convertible, and for some reason the cats in the summertime, they love to sit on her roof. They don't sit on the roof of my hardtop. All my cars are hardtops. She can come home on the driveway, and one of them will jump up while she's still in the car, right on her roof. And it gets her so mad. I try to put a cover on it all the time when she comes home, but, you know, cat hairs all over. But they just love to sit on her roof. And, you know, I didn't buy these cats. You know, there must be a sign up on my door saying, "Drop your cats here." But each one is different. I mean, it's, you know, we have an indoor cat. I don't know how I got that by my wife. We picked him up one night. It was just a little kitten crossing the road. I said, "Oh, grab him." So he's probably about 14 years old. We actually live next to my son. My son's got miniature horses in his body shop right in his shop, right by his house there. Another interesting story, the house at the front of our house was just sold. It's a Sears house. Remember when you could buy the Sears house and put it together? So, I mean, that's pretty historic. I mean, they just sold it, but I mean, it's pretty cool. It's a little Sears house from, I guess, from the 1940s. But that's what you don't want to do. You want to prepare for roads if you're going to store your car over the winter. You want to use late model GTO owners. Lincolnfeller sold this GTO years ago. I got a chance to drive it when Lincolnfeller was alive. The original, I can't think of his first name, but they're right there in Indiana. He's out in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of a cornfield. But Lincolnfeller's a big name. He built that GTO and sold it several years ago. There's two more pictures of that display. Boy, I'd love to have that display from the early 60s. Man. There's a Hurst Olds. I don't know if I told you, but in a few weeks at Chrysler's at Carlisle, they're having the first Hurst Nationals. They already had over 75 Hurst cars coming, including the original. I don't know if it's probably a reproduction. The Hemi under glass car of Bob Riggles is coming. I didn't bring it. I have the original Hemi under glass model. It sat on George Hurst's desk. I'm going to take a picture of the two of them together. But I'm speaking there both days. My granddaughter is going to help me. She's a car nut. She just graduated from high school. She's going to Penn State. She's part of that Schreier's honor thing. I mean, she's got a 4 point. I mean, the kid is super smart. Yeah.
I got a video a couple months ago where Jay Leno was riding that.
Yeah, that's been restored. And he's coming. Bob Riggles is like 80 years old. Yeah, that car's going to be there. Yeah, that's going to be a pretty big event. And I'm speaking both days yet. Both days are. It's kind of cool. I live about 2 hours from Carlisle. I can remember going to Carlisle and be able to park in the infield when they first started. I mean, never dreaming that years later I'd be a speaker there at seminars. I've spoken at Corvette things there. Because the thing is, with Hurst, it crosses over to everything. And the other thing is that the VIN stickers crosses over to everything, GM. And of course, the GTO connection. So I got it pretty well covered. You know, it's a non-paying gig, but I mean, it's still good PR. This is pretty good. This is a copy of the front and back of the best looking catalog that Hurst ever put out. I can't remember the year. You see those 3 Hurst wheels there? I had the blue one that was used in this photo. I had the red one too, but I sold it. I couldn't turn down the money. This was years ago. It's probably worth a lot more now, because there's only one of them around. I always talked about the Hurst ring, you know, it would reflect on the ground. Oh, one other thing. Geez, one of the biggest projects I did. Holy cow, I forgot about it. The Rally 1 wheels, the first ones. That was my project. I'll tell you how that came about. Guy calls me up from California. He says, "Do you think it'd be a market to make the Rally 1 wheels?" And I'm saying, well, yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, used ones are bringing $400 to $600, which is a lot of money back then. I said, but man, I don't know. I said, you got to get them tested and all that other stuff. I said, I haven't got that kind of money. I said, you ought to approach somebody else. He says, I'll put the money in. I said, really? He said, would you be able to sell them? I said, well, yeah, if they're certified or whatever. I said, I know nothing about the wheel market at all. He says, I'll take